guys, I'm Porsche, and this is my 2019 Porsche GT3 RS. If you're new to my channel and haven't seen any of my other videos yet, I really hope that you like this video, and I hope you consider subscribing. I have had a pretty explosive amount of subscriptions and views lately that I wasn't really prepared for, and I was never really expecting, but now that they're there, I feel like I really need to step my game up. You guys have been giving me a lot of constructive criticism on comments, on emails, on DMs on Instagram, and I've been listening to those comments and taking them in. So I think one of the biggest complaints I've read so far is people losing interest because maybe my lack of focus or not being organized. A lot of my videos were kind of more like seat of the pants, not really planned out, kind of just jumping in the car and recording whatever came to my mind. Today's video is going to be a lot more organized and focused, and I do have a plan this time. I hope you guys appreciate me doing it that way and taking the time to do that, and I hope that you enjoy the video from the beginning all the way to the end. So today's topic is about this car and how it compared to the previous generation. So as I already mentioned, this is the 2019 Porsche GT3 RS. It's also known as the 991 Generation 2. The previous model was the 2016 GT3 RS, and that was known as the 991 Generation 1. For most people looking at the two cars, they probably look exactly the same, but I want to talk about the differences. So yeah, let's jump into it. All right, so first thing I want to mention is that I'm well aware that my car is dirty right now. From this far back, it probably doesn't look dirty, but as we get closer into panels and showing differences and talking about small specific things, you will see that there are some smudges and things like that on the car. Don't worry, I'll wash it later today. Anyway, let's talk about these differences. So let's start with the front bumper and the front end of the car. The front bumper itself has been redesigned, and the new redesign actually offers more downforce. And you'll see that downforce is definitely a key element in some of the changes that they made. So most notably, those front slits right there in the front where there's an intake for the radiators, that has been redesigned. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a picture of the 2016 front bumper. I'll just take a picture and I'll throw it over the screen so you guys can see the difference. Next up, we've got the fender vents. So this is one of my favorite features of these cars. I know it sounds corny or whatever, but I think they just look awesome. So the new GT3 RS gets the fender vents borrowed from the GT2 RS. They're bigger than the 991.1 and more aggressive, and they provide more downforce. Next up, we've got the Naka ducts. I don't know if I'm saying that right, I think I am. But the Naka ducts are right here on the hood. So it's the same hood design as the last version, and it is full carbon fiber, but the last version did not have these Naka ducts. Now these Naka ducts are used to cool the front brakes. So that air is actually, these aren't like, some cars actually have like fake air intakes somewhere, you know, throughout the car. These are real, these are functional, and there are some holes underneath the hood that go down through the front bumper, or the front clip I should say, and they come down and they cool the brakes. All right, so next up, let's talk about the side skirts. The side skirts have been widened. They're really aggressive for a stock car. I don't know if I've ever seen a stock side skirt that's this aggressive. I mean, you can step on it. It's pretty, it is pretty aggressive in my opinion. And I like it a lot. I think it looks cool. Next up, we've got the side intakes, or engine intakes, I guess you would say, intake ducts. They're right here. And these have been widened. They're a lot more similar to what you would see on the GT2 RS. So let's move along to the rear bumper. The rear bumper is now larger. Sorry, it's not larger, but it has a more large and aggressive diffuser. And it's just styled a little bit differently as well. But if I get really low down under here for you guys, you can actually see there are some slits underneath here that add to the diffuser that goes underneath the engine. Hopefully you can get a good look there. Next, we've got the wing. So this was actually a surprise to me because the 2016 991.1 has a huge wing, and obviously this does as well. But they looked really similar to me, and I would have never known this. But this is actually a taller, larger, more aggressive wing, which is also borrowed again from the GT3 RS. So there's been multiple components we've talked about that were borrowed from the GT3 RS. Overall, between all these changes, the wing, the rear bumper diffuser, the side skirts, the front vents, the front bumper, they added 8% increase in downforce. All right, guys, let's talk about weight savings. So yeah, you know, I've really been cutting back on the burritos. Usually I'd eat 5 burritos a week, and I only eat 4, and I've noticed a huge difference in my driving performance. No, I'm just kidding. So the new model, what they've changed here is that this rear glass right here and the rear window, this is actually polycarbonate. So you can kind of hear this, hopefully you can hear that sound. It's more of like a plastic sound and feel. Again here, and then this is glass. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera. This is glass as well. That's definitely a lot louder and thicker right here than it is. Even this is a little bit thinner, and this is very thin. You can feel it when you're knocking on it. So they did reduce weight by changing the glass in the back there. Additionally, they have reduced some of the thickness of the carpet in the rear, which kind of makes a lot of sense, because I mean, this carpet back here, it doesn't really do anything. No one sits back there. So apparently they reduced the thickness. Who knows how much weight that saved? It probably must have been almost nothing. But anyway, that's what they did. And they removed some of the sound isolating foam. I'm really glad that they did that. I mean, yeah, it might impact a Bluetooth phone call here and there, where people are saying, I can't hear you, all I can hear is your car. But I don't really care. That's not what I bought. I didn't buy this car for making phone calls. I'd much rather be able to hear the motor right behind my head, you know, a little bit more clearly without that foam in place. So let's talk about some of the differences of the cars when you were going to go order it, with colors and options and things like that. I can't get into every little detail, but I'm going to touch on some of the key things. So let's talk about some of the colors that were available for the 2016 older Gen 1 versus what's available now and the changes. So the one that impacted me the most, I guess, was that the Voodoo color for the Gen 1 was removed, and I absolutely love that color. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a picture of the Voodoo color GT3 RS on the screen right here so you guys can see what it looks like. But it was a really deep kind of royal blue color. So that was removed, and they did add Miami blue, but to the best of my knowledge, Miami blue is basically almost the same thing as what was called Mexico blue for the Gen 1. So Gen 2 has Miami blue, Gen 1 had Mexico blue. So there's only one blue now instead of 2. They added racing yellow, and I was trying to do a little bit of research about the old yellow color that was available, and it was called signal yellow, but there was some statistics saying that only 3 of them were ever built in signal yellow. So I think you had to actually call Porsche or order through your dealership custom to get that color. So you can almost say that was never available, and now yellow is a regular color. But that being said, when I was doing a lot of shopping, I think I only saw 1 yellow car out of, you know, maybe 50. And then finally, they added a very popular color called chalk, which is kind of like a flat gray color, almost like a flat white mixed with gray, or really light gray. But I'll throw that color on the screen here too, so you guys can see what that looks like. Next up, they added a package that is probably the most controversial, popular, most talked about package for the Gen 2. And that's called the, I'm probably gonna butcher this, it's spelled out kind of like Weissach, but I think it's pronounced in German as Weissach. So the Weissach package is now available. It includes a carbon fiber roof instead of magnesium. And it also includes exposed carbon fiber hood and exposed carbon fiber rear deck wing. So instead of having this being black, you know, the hood black here, it would be exposed carbon. I don't know if this is correct. I would think that if you just strip the paint off of this, you could get that same thing for free. And same with this. This is already carbon fiber right here. This is all carbon fiber from the factory. It's just painted. So the funny thing is that they're actually doing less work and charging you money to do that. I don't know if maybe there's more work involved in the clear coating of the carbon fiber, but I don't think there is. I think they're kind of just making some free money off of us. So with the removal of the magnesium roof, switching to carbon fiber roof, you save 1 pound. It's actually less than a pound. I did the math. It was like 400 grams and it comes out to like 0.8 pounds. So we're not talking about a huge weight savings, and that's what they're kind of touting it as a big weight savings. But I'm kind of, I guess I'm kind of against the whole Y-Stack package. It's really just for looks, in my opinion. Just so you guys know, it costs $18,000 to upgrade to the Y-Stack package. So it's a lot of money for that option. Next, let's talk about the wheels. So one of the ways that you can tell if someone has the new model GT3 RS, the Gen 2, is if you look at the wheels, there will be a GT3 RS embossed into the wheel itself that wasn't there before. So right here on the wheel, you can see it says GT3 RS, and that is embossed. You can feel it with your finger. The old version did not have that embossed. The wheels are also supposedly about 1 pound lighter per wheel. So 4 pounds of weight savings there. Next up, there's also an additional wheel color available that you can order, which is called Satin Aurum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. It's basically just gold, and that color is only available in the magnesium wheel, which starts to get kind of tricky because you can only get the magnesium wheels if you're ordering the Y-Stack package. So you're talking about a $13,000 wheel option plus a $690 color change wheel plus $18,000 for the Y-Stack package. So we're talking about $32,000 to get that wheel color if you really want it. I mean, obviously you're getting other stuff too, but I personally think that's not an ideal choice of money spent, but that's just me personally. The car is now standard with the 3D LED taillights. I don't really know what the old ones look like. I'm just gonna mention it and move on. It's not a big deal. The redesigned suspension is probably one of the biggest points of the car. So it has been redesigned to be stiffer and more aggressive to feel more similar to the 911 GT3 Cup car, which is a track car. You can't buy that for street driving. The spring rates have been doubled for the front, and they've been 50% increased for the rear. We'll talk more about suspension related stuff when we drive the car with you guys in a minute here. And then the miles per gallon has actually been increased from 14 miles per gallon in the city to a whopping 15 miles per gallon in the city, with the highway driving still consistently being at 20 miles per gallon. I drove this car from the Bay Area in California all the way down to San Diego, where I live, which is, I think it was something like 500 miles, and I averaged 19 point something miles per gallon the whole trip. So the 20 is actually pretty accurate considering that I was definitely stomping on the gas a lot. But it does pretty decent, I think, for, you know, a car of this caliber. So let's pop the hood and talk about the motor and some of the driving changes. You guys ready for this thing? Ooh. Whoa! Okay, yeah, there's not a whole lot to see here. Sorry for that teaser, guys. All right, so as I mentioned, the miles per gallon has changed. The changes in the actual power output from Gen 1 to Gen 2 do not sound dramatic or significant. So the horsepower increased from 500 to 520, only an increase of 20 horsepower, and the torque increased by 7 foot-pounds. However, they are saying that the usable torque curve itself has been improved a lot, so that you're getting more torque throughout the power band, and it's supposed to be a better feel of driving. The way that they improved these increases in power, they didn't change the size of the motor or anything, but what they did change is the oil system, the crankcase, the valve train, and the piston rings. So all this on paper comes out to be an increase on a 0 to 60 time. They're claiming the old Gen 1 went 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds, and that the new model does it in 3.0 seconds. So that is a significant increase in performance on a 0 to 60 time if you're using launch control. If you go look at some of the websites, some people are saying they got a 3.1 on the old Gen 1, and some people are saying 2.8 and 2.9 on the new Gen 2. So, you know, it's about 0.2 to 0.3 seconds faster, which I'm sure a lot of people would think that doesn't sound like very much, but the law of diminishing returns will kind of argue with that, saying that every little increase in power as you're getting closer to zero, it gets harder and harder to get your 0 to 60 time down smaller or faster, however you want to say it. So it is pretty impressive. The quarter mile time was reduced from 11.1 to 10.9 seconds. The PDK shift times have actually been improved, which is hard to believe because the previous PDK was so insanely fast that it sounds almost impossible for one to think that it could be faster, but apparently it has. I don't have any statistics about how much. And then finally, as far as the engine stuff goes, this motor, this 4.0 liter flat 6, has the rev limiter increased from 8,800 to 9,000 RPM. So I know a lot of these figures, they just on paper, they don't sound all that impressive of an increase. Like, you know, and also keep in mind, it was only a 3-year gap between the two cars. So, but a lot of it doesn't sound super impressive. And that's how I felt about it too, because I was originally thinking I wanted the 2016 model. But the feel of the car definitely is significantly different. And we will talk about that in just a second when we jump in and drive it and talk about it inside the car. But the last note I have on my list here before we drive it is the price. So yeah, the 2016 Gen 1 was priced at just about 177 grand, while the new Gen 2, this model, is priced at about 187 grand. So you're looking at about a $10,000 price increase between the two. And you know, obviously everyone would like improvements to come at the same price, but we're only talking about a 3-year difference. And I think a lot of these changes are actually justifying that $10,000 difference. For instance, if you were able to go to the Porsche dealership and have both models be 2019s, just with the 2016 options on one car and the 2019 Gen 2 options on the other, and there was just a $10,000 price difference, I definitely would go for the new 2019 Gen 2, even if they were priced at the same and they're both brand new cars. I think that the downforce changes, the suspension changes, the noise changes on the motor, and the small increases in power are well worth $10,000. So with that being said, I think it's time to jump in the car. All right, so I've got you guys strapped in here on the GoPro mount inside the car. And a quick change I'm just gonna mention is that I've been doing a lot of videos with interior filming with the camera pointed at my face. I decided that in this video, I think it makes a lot more sense to have the camera facing out toward the road. You guys don't need to be looking at my ugly mug. I get that. You guys want to see what's going on outside the car. So let's go ahead and start it up. I've mentioned this in some other videos. The startup noise, the engine note, the exhaust note, it's very hard to capture on a basic GoPro camera like what I'm filming on right here. So I apologize. I do want to get a better microphone setup, and I am planning on getting some cold starts for you guys with a really good really good microphone. So that will be coming up in the future. But let's talk about the differences behind the wheel between the Gen 1 and Gen 2. Also, just to make sure I'm being clear, I have driven both cars. Obviously I own this one, but I've only driven the Gen 1 for a limited amount of time. So what I did is I talked to some other people that have owned both cars. There's actually a guy that lives in my area that has had a bunch of different GT3 RSs, and he has a lot of different Porsches. He was a really good guy to talk to, and I also looked at some research online about some other guys that have owned both cars. So I don't want to just give you my opinions based on limited seat time. A lot of this is coming from people that are a lot more experienced than me. So while we're waiting for the motor to warm up, which will only take about 1 minute, I'm going to talk about the suspension, because that's going to be probably the biggest difference between the two cars. The drivability of the new suspension is night and day from Gen 1 to Gen 2. I already mentioned the spring rates, and those are just numbers, those are things on paper. What really matters is the feel behind the wheel. So this increase in spring rate on the front and rear, as I mentioned, 100% increase in the front, 50% increase in the rear, really translates to a car that feels and behaves a lot differently. And when I say a lot differently, it's all about the roughness of the ride and the performance that roughness can give you. So I'm warmed up now and I'm gonna start driving here, but that roughness for some people might not be ideal, because it is a very rough ride. This GT3 RS in regular mode feels probably stiffer and more hardcore than my GTR felt in the most hardcore mode, the R mode that GTR provided. So it is not for everyone. I like to daily drive it personally, I'm cool with that, but some people, especially if you're maybe older or have a bad back or things like that, it might not be very ideal for you as a daily driver. It might not be very ideal for you even as a track car. So I just want to talk about that a little bit, but I love it, and I love that hardcore feel. I'm not a track car guy. This is my first track car. I mean, you could say a GTR is a track car, but this is a hardcore track car. It really is, and I'm really excited to take this to the track. They do recommend you wait for 2,000 miles, I think, for the break-in before you track it. I'm already at 750, so we're getting close. But so anyway, the new suspension, it delivers a sharper response with increased feel. So you feel really connected to the road with this car. The only trade-off, as I mentioned, is the ride quality. It's not a luxury feel at all. So, you know, that's the trade-off. And I'm cool with that trade-off. Some people wouldn't be. Next, let's talk about the noise. So, I've already mentioned that my camera isn't gonna capture the noise all that great because it's not a good microphone, but it is a really noisy car inside. And this is so similar to the suspension thing we just talked about. The noise inside and outside the car, it's a hardcore setup for a hardcore enthusiast that really likes cars and the sounds that cars make, specifically this car. So you hear everything inside this car. When you're driving over a regular road like I'm on right now, sometimes there's gravel and rocks that are just naturally there from people driving. You will hear all those little rocks when you're driving slow getting kicked up and hitting in the wheel wells, because you've got Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, crazy grippy tires, and they're picking up those little rocks, the little gravel pieces, and kicking them all over. If I were to pull over and take the camera out and show you the side intakes that I showed you earlier that have been widened, I've only had this car for like less than a month. I already see little tiny pebbles stuck inside the intakes from getting kicked up by the tires. So there's a lot of noise. You can hear little rocks getting thrown around. You can hear all the little bumps. You can feel all the little bumps, and you can hear the motor, because I also talked about how the noise, the weight reduction, some of the weight reduction was done by removing isolation foam that was supposed to be for noise reduction. And you know, you can hear everything. And I love it. I absolutely love hearing everything. So now the next thing I want to talk about is more suspension related again. I know I keep talking about suspension, but I already mentioned it's probably the most important change. So the combination of the redesigned suspension and the redesigned front bumper with front bumper vents that everything's been widened to increase the downforce, it really plants the front of the car, which is great because you've got the motor in the back with all the weight back there, and it's rear wheel drive, and now you've got this increased downforce balancing the car out even better, which is great on the track and in turns. So a lot of people like to describe that kind of like they'll say it's the best feeling turn-in car that they've ever driven. And that's a lot, you know, to be said about a car, to say it's the best. That's a bold statement for any car to say it's the best at something, right? So here's the next thing I want to talk about is the calmness and the smoothness of the cars. And this is all going, I know this is very repetitive probably because suspension and noise are similar to calmness and smoothness, but the overall ride of the Gen 1, when you get in the Gen 1, it just has a much calmer and smooth nature to it. It feels like it could be more of a daily driver, and that's fine. It could serve a different purpose for a different person, and even you could even see someone owning both, owning the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, with their Gen 2 becoming more of a dedicated track car and the Gen 1 becoming more of a dedicated daily driver. I could even see someone maybe putting the less hardcore, I think they're 18-way adjustable seats, power seats, into the Gen 1 to make it even more of a daily driver. And that's fine, especially if you had both cars. I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting, I don't have the money to do something like that and own both, but some people do. So overall, the Gen 2 is stiffer, it's louder, and it's faster. It's doing a lot of those things that a lot of pure enthusiasts want. It does those things that you want it to do better. So all these things have all these changes on paper create changes on the track, right? So, and that's what this car is all about. Changes on the track. All of these little changes, they all sound little, but there's a lot of little changes. How does that translate into better lap times? Well, it translates dramatically. If you look at the Nürburgring lap times, this car is, I believe it's number 6 on the list of top lap times for road legal cars. So we've got cars ahead of it being the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ, which is just came out this year. We've got the Lamborghini Huracan Performante, which is significantly more, both of those cars are significantly more expensive than this. We've got the Porsche GT3 RS, the big brother, which is about double the price and arguably sounds worse because of the turbos that were added. And we've got the Radical SR8. So it's not a huge pack of cars that are above it, and we're only talking about a 10-second difference between this car and the fastest car, which is the SVJ. Sorry, 12-second difference. So this does the Nürburgring in 6 minutes and 54 seconds. Sorry, 6 minutes 56 seconds, while the SVJ did it in 6 minutes 44 seconds. The SVJ is like a $600,000 car. This is a third of the price. Just take that in for a second. That's a third of the price for almost the same performance, while getting, in my opinion, a better driver's experience, because I personally just don't like the feel of Lamborghinis. Sorry if it triggers anyone that's huge on Lamborghinis, but I just don't have a big love for the feel of them. But that's a really significant difference. And also take into account, this is beating the 918 Spider, which is basically $1 million hypercar. This is only losing to the GT3 RS by seconds. I think it's 7 seconds that it loses on the Nürburgring. And that car has 177 more horsepower and 206 foot-pounds more of torque. That's wild. So just real quickly before I cut the video off, just want to mention I do appreciate everyone that's been subscribing. It's been such a surprise to me. You know, I was going from getting, you know, maybe 1 subscriber a day to all of a sudden I'm getting about 30, which would put me on track to get to my goal of 1,000 subscribers within about the next 1 or 2 months, which is great, because I kind of was starting to feel like I would never get there, and now I'm actually seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you did like the video and you haven't subscribed, I do appreciate you subscribing. If you have any things you want to discuss with me or any critiquing, feel free to comment or email me. My email's in the description. And just the future videos I have on the docket here, I'm going to be doing a video of reviewing some of the cleaning products that I bought. I did a video about ordering them and buying them and shopping for them, and now most of them have arrived at my house. So I'm going to start using them and doing some video footage of them. And then next up, I want to do kind of like a Doug DeMuro style review of the car inside and out, talking about, well, like as Doug would say, the quirks and features. I love Doug DeMuro's videos, so he hasn't even done this car yet, and I'd love to kind of deliver a similar style, not completely copying him, but a similar style video about the car. And then finally, something I've been wanting to do is a delivery video of this vehicle, simulating what it's like to, when you purchase this vehicle, a simulation of what it's like to get the car delivered, where they go over every little detail and option on the car. I know for some people that video is going to be a little bit too long, because it'll probably be at least an hour and I might have to break it into 2 parts. It might not be for everyone, but some people might love it, and it's for those people. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching all the way to this to the end of the video here, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments and hearing from you guys. Have a great day.